Yeah, it's going to be a tough course out there for the women to navigate, but not as tough as it has been in some years. It's not as muddy underfoot, and it's not as windy. There's no rain, no snow, so it should be an interesting race. Great Britain certainly looking to get points, and of course Steve Crown will talk you through how that's going as well. So Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Gabby. Yes, as you said, conditions maybe not as difficult as they've been over the years, and it's obviously means we've got a big crowd out there watching, which is wonderful to see, and they're seeing some of the best cross-country exponents in the world. The USA will be hoping, as they are leading at the minute after the two junior races, that their women can at least hang on to Great Britain and Europe here. Will be tough, I think, because the European team and the British team very strong here. Marielle Hall leading the USA team. Sarah Pagano has been going well recently, ran well in New York on New Year's Eve. Well, Fanula's, in the last 5 years since we've had this Europe-USA Great Britain Challenge, has been in the top two. She's won it on 2 occasions, in pretty good form. Was a little disappointed with her European Championships, because this is the lady who ran away with the race on that occasion. Former Kenyan, now running for Turkey, maybe more of that once we get going. Chan. And I think with those two in the European team, it's going to be tough for Great Britain. I know Steph said in that interview she was hoping that Great Britain can dominate here. Well, I think that's going to be difficult. Steph leading the team, a lot of experience in there. Gemma Steele, Charlotte Arter there, Beth Potter, the Scottish athlete, just on Steph's left. Of course, Steph Twell, Scottish athlete as well. So where they go, 6 kilometers. Not a long race really for some of these women. It's a pretty short distance, 4 laps of this 1,500 meter course, that testing section across the road. So it'll be really interesting to see how they settle down, and indeed whether or not anybody really fancies setting an early tempo, because I think certainly this European trio there at the front, the 2 former Kenyans running for Turkey and McCormack running for Turkey and therefore Europe on this occasion, and then McCormack just tucked in the middle there. Well, Paula, you and I and Brendan will have watched. You and I were commentating on that European race. I said Fanula was really disappointed. I mean, it's only because she sets very high standards for herself and is in good shape, but to be honest, she never really got in contention with those two.
No, she didn't. She didn't really run aggressively there at all, not in the manner that we usually see Fanula attacking the races in the way that she set out today. I mean, 6 kilometers on a firm course like today's course is short for Fanula, and it's going to be less in her court than maybe the Europeans would have been, but she obviously wasn't quite 100% there, walked away frustrated after that race, and will have trained hard over the Christmas and New Year break and come here knowing that she's always raced here well, and she wants to underline that and make amends almost for that disappointment for her in the European Championships.
You're right, Paula, she really has raced well here. First on 2 occasions and second on 3 occasions since then, and this is a figure we've seen, and this is a format we've seen with her head down in the lead on a course which has often been much more difficult than this. Today the course is very fair. It's fairly firm on the far side. It's not too muddy on the near side, and Fanula McCormack there from Ireland representing Europe. We've seen her run great here before. We've seen her run well. She's now moved up to the marathon. I think she'll have a good future at the marathon, but this is her terrain, and this is an event she loves, and this is an event she runs extremely well in.
So Fanula has gone to the front already, and as Paula was saying, she didn't really get the chance to do this at the European Championships. Chan and Agdag, as I said, the 2 former Kenyans. I mean, just to give you an idea, Chan ran both the 5 and the 10 in the Olympics, finishing certainly was 7th, I think, in the 10,000, and one better in the 5,000. And that's the pedigree, that track pedigree that they can bring to this. And okay, if it was really muddy and cold, sometimes we think, okay, the Kenyans, but we've seen great African athletes over the years come here to Edinburgh and run really well. So if they're fit, as they obviously are, then although it's a test for everybody, these conditions I don't think are going to frighten them, but it's good to see Fionnuala going with them at this early stage.
Yeah, I think the big difference that you can see is, as we saw then, when the two Turkish athletes went either side of Fionnuala, and they just have a change of pace that she doesn't have, and she's able to maintain contact, but when they want to create gaps and just put a little bit of a change of pace in, they can do so much more quickly, and Fionnuala finds it hard to be able to react to that, and she's more relying on the fact that it's going to be a steep uphill, or it's going to be very tufty grass. And I think the biggest dangers on this course today aren't the mud out there, because it's not really muddy. It is that long grass and just spikes getting tangled in it and falling because of that. Or when they go up the hill and they jump the stream. When you jump the stream there, it's actually slate underfoot, and so the spikes will slide on that, and they'd almost be better with shorter spikes on that section of the course.
Well, these are the three class athletes from Europe. And Can, who represented Turkey in the Olympic Games and finished 6th in the 5,000 meters and 7th in the 10,000 meters. Two fantastic performances in those classy races in the Olympic Games. She's the class act of this field. The European cross-country champion as well. She ran really well to win that. And here she is now taking the position that a lot of people are expecting. She's a pre-race favorite. There's a lot of issues about athletes transferring countries, but at the end of the day, this is a young athlete who was born and lived in Kenya, then moved to Turkey and is representing Turkey, representing Europe today. But whatever happens, whatever you talk about it, whatever you say, whoever she's representing, she's a very, very good athlete.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the issue. I don't think anybody wants to deny good athletes the chance to compete. I think it's the fact that for athletes being able to transfer quickly. We're going to see some Kenyans running in the American team. I mean, you take Mo as an example of somebody obviously who comes to a country, and whether you move at the age of 10 or 15 or at 23, if you've lived there long enough, that's fair enough. I think it's when it's an obvious transfer in order to be able to run for a country. We know how strong Kenya is, and as good as she is, she might not make the Kenyan team, but you're always going to make the team for Turkey. So yes, I think it's something the IAAF and the other authorities are looking at strongly. A lot of athletes feel very strongly about it. Fionnuala has been pretty verbal about it, I know. It's not aimed at the individual athletes, it's about the process, and that process needs to be, in my view anyway, needs to be reviewed and revised to make it a little bit more difficult. I think you have to spend a lot more time in the country before you get the chance to run for that country.
You can't have feeling there's far too many transfers of convenience, athletes who are moving from one country to another, who live in their home country and then represent a different country. When athletes move countries to live and train and come up in the culture of that country, then clearly they should represent that country. But here are two athletes representing Turkey, both Kenyan athletes, both travelled in here from Kenya. They were saying it was 24 degrees in Kenya. And Fionnuala McCormack from Ireland, proud to represent Europe and running strongly here, but she finds two athletes ahead of her who've come down from altitude to be here. And then the British team being led by Steph Twell. And there's a bunch of athletes, including the Americans, but the European team are taking the prizes here at the moment, 1, 2 and 3.
Well, you could see the standings in this race. Not really much improvement for Great Britain overall, because although Steph Twell, you can see leading the group here, got Beth Potter up in that lead group, Pippa Wolven just at the back of it, they're just going through the picture, but Great Britain not really able to improve their overall position at this point. Europe were definitely going to be dominant, and of course after this race Europe could be in a very good position in terms of the overall competition against the USA. So we'll all come down to the men's race. I expect Europe, given that they're in the top 3 positions here and they've got another couple of athletes in that chasing group as well. Bobichel, who ran very well at the European Championships herself, coming back to some sort of form, is just in that group. So McCormack clear in 3rd. It's going to be a long, tough race for Fionnuala because the two Turkish athletes are away. There's the 4th counter, 5th and 6th coming through for Europe. So at the moment they're in a dominant position, and these two, well, I'm sure they're going to continue to go away. They've raced each other regularly, and as Brendan was saying, it was actually quite almost summer conditions at those European cross-country championships. I mean, often they're held in cold and icy and snow, but in Sardinia there was pretty nice conditions for all of the athletes to enjoy, and it's not quite like that today, but it's, by Edinburgh standards, it's spring-like.
By Edinburgh standards, it's summer conditions, Steve. 8 degrees out there. People enjoying the outside temperatures, because often here we've had snow and wind and rain, but we still had some class athletes competing, and here are 2 class athletes, John and Agdag, representing Europe, and we see in 3rd place there, just coming across the stream, running very well in 3rd place. Fionnuala McCormack, the Irish athlete, who's been in the first 2 on the last 5 occasions when this event has been run. Today she's a bit lower, she's in 3rd place, but she's in the middle of a clean sweep here at the moment, with European athletes representing Europe being 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5.
Paula in past years, we're looking at Fionnuala in 3rd. Well, we're not seeing her just at the moment. She's quite a long way back. Steph Twell leading the charge. Just a word on Gemma Steele. We've got this great group of distance runners. I mean, Laura Muir's throwing her hat into the ring for 5,000 metres now. Ailish McColgan, who's away training. 1 or 2 of our other distance athletes are already in Kenya and South Africa doing their winter altitude work. Just a word on Gemma as we see Fionnuala going through. It's been a difficult little period for her.
Yes, it has. It's been a really tough last year or so for Gemma. I think she suffered a little bit with illness. I think she suffered a little bit with motivation as well, and just with not finding her body responding to the training in the way that it had done in previous years. And then, as you say, seeing the other girls move on so well around her, I think she struggled mentally with that decision of should she move to the marathon or should she stick with the shorter distances on the road and the cross country, and couldn't really make that choice, and so ended up kind of stuck in the middle of all of those. And she needs to now really, I think, go back, focus, back to basics. She's been coached by Rob Denmark in Loughborough, and just concentrate on working her way back to the form where she had, because Gemma really races at her best when she's not worried about anything, and she's certainly worrying at the moment.
Gemma Steele, former winner, in 2014, 3rd last year behind Kate Avery and Fionnuala McCormack, so a long way off that at the moment. Chan and Agdag going through. Fionnuala will be hoping that Agdag just starts to drop away a little further and give us something to run at here, because she's really out there on her own. The 3 European athletes leading, and then Europe being further strengthened behind. They're wearing the blue and the orange shorts. Barker and Bobachel coming through. The 2 Romanians representing Europe in 4th and 5th place. Then it's America behind them. I said Pagano ran really well in New Year's Eve in that 4-mile event. Andy Vernon, actually, going to see Andy in the senior men's race shortly. Andy won the men's race, and Pagano won the women's race. Lots of New Year's Eve races around the world. I think Steph Twell also ran on, didn't she run in the Bolzano race, ran really well in 4th place then as well. But starting the new year into January, Chan, where she left off in 2016, leading for Europe, and that lead getting a bit bigger. And as I said, Fionnuala, Paula might just be hoping that Agdag can come back to her.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what Fionnuala will be looking at. That gap when the Agdag and Chan decided to really make the move opened up very quickly. But since then, the gap to Chan is growing more and more, but the one to Agdag is not. And I think that Fionnuala will have clocked that. She will have realised that. She will be keeping very focused on that back in front of her. And can she just reel it in step by step? I think she may run out of distance though.
So those points there, Europe after 2 laps, leading, dominating, as we said, in first 5 places, 6 to count here. Great Britain into 2nd place in this particular race, but still languishing in the current match standings. Pippa Wolven just going through the picture there. Steph Twell not going quite so well today. I'd expect Steph to be up there with those other Europeans, really, much better position than she currently is, and Pippa Wolven leading for Great Britain at the moment.
Yeah, Steph was actually, talking to her this morning, she was ill over Christmas and New Year, so she said she hoped she was over it and she was going to be able to come out and run well, but she's obviously not quite back to 100%.
Well, look how hard Fionnuala is working, a big gap between her and the chasing group, and as I said, I mean, she's fine running on her own. She'd often be running on her own at the front. I think the week after the European Cross Country Championships, she kind of got it out of her system. She won the Lotto Cup front running there, shorter race, but today having to watch these two former Kenyans now representing Turkey, makes them members of this European team. The two top places at the European Championships. Fionnuala out of the medals on that occasion, but in the top three here today. And she's got time to catch Agdag, and I think that gap is certainly shortening between those two. Here's the battle for fourth place. Barker and Bobichel, the two Romanians, with Lipari and Pagano, the two Americans behind, and then Pippa Wolven and Charlotte Arter, the two best of the British athletes. Charlotte won the famous Noskalan race in preparation for this today.
You said earlier that Steph 12 wasn't running so well, but if you look at it, these athletes are running away from the British contingent. They're not running so well today, but you're looking at an athlete here, Yasmin Jean, who's a very, very good athlete indeed. There's only Paula Radcliffe, out of British athletes, ever run faster than her at 10,000 metres. She's run 30.26 for 10,000 metres, which is a world-class performance. And if you look at it, there's Agdag in second place. She was second in the European Championships. Her position may come under pressure, but whatever country this lady represents, we know she's Kenyan, we know she represents Turkey, we know she's been selected by Europe. We know that there's a lot of contentious issues there about transferees, but at the end of the day, we're looking at a fine young athlete and running well, very, very well today.
Well, she certainly looks comfortable on this surface, doesn't she? I think actually, you know, your comment, Brian, about how good she is. Agdag is a pretty average steeplechaser on the track. She doesn't have the track pedigree of Jan at all, and that's maybe a little bit in evidence here today. Really coping with the ground underfoot very comfortably, enjoying this little downhill section. And she'll hear the bell and she'll head out onto the last lap. Fionnuala's still got time. She's got 1,500 meters after this to catch Agdag, and that gap now between Fionnuala, Britain, and Agdag is only about 3 or 4 seconds, and I suspect the Irish athlete, of course, they're both running for the same team here, which has got a great chance of getting second spot here. So Jan goes through in the lead, 15.25, that lead increasing all the time to her teammate. Agdag is in second place, just about to cross the line. She does so 14 seconds adrift, and then another gap of 5 seconds to McCormack, and that gap is certainly one which she could close on this last lap here. Agdag may well rally, of course, when McCormack comes up to her. At least it gives her something to focus on ahead of her and doesn't have to worry about what's going on behind. Here's the chase for fourth place. Bobichel now, the two Romanians and the two Americans, then Charlotte Arter and Pippa Wolven going through in 8th and 9th, the best of the British athletes. Claire Duck going through, and Beth Potter ahead of Steph 12. Steph really having a bit of a struggle so far today.
But look at this performance here. We are looking at a fine performance by Yasmin Jean, representing Europe. I think there's going to be an exciting race there in second place, second and third, between Fionnuala, McCormack and Agdag. But it would have been interesting today if you look at this, if Laura Muir had given this a go. You know, it's only 6 kilometres. She ran a British record indoors for 5 kilometres on Wednesday night. She's clearly an athlete in form. She's clearly an athlete of strength. And I wouldn't have been surprised if she'd taken part in this longer race. She'd have been in contention today. So some hope for the future with Laura Muir running this kind of distance. And there, look at the determination of Fionnuala McCormack. She's working hard, she's running strongly, she's closing down on Agdag. She's probably a bit frustrated that she's running behind two athletes who she doesn't feel fairly represent Europe, but never mind that. She's in there, she's running well, and the Europe have got they've got the first 4 runners, and then another one just in close contention before we see Charlotte Arter running the first Briton, and Pippa Wolven just behind her, and then further down the field you can see Steph 12 not running quite so well today.
Yeah, you can just see the contrast in form there between Jeanne, very comfortable. Little look around to see just how big of a gap she's got. It's a huge gap. But if you go back to Achtag behind her, her head has dropped back slightly and she's definitely tired. I don't know whether she's getting information that Fionnuala is closing on her, but pretty soon she's going to realise that, or even hear Fionnuala as she comes alongside her. And I think that frustration that you talked about, Brendan, Fionnuala's been quite open about the fact that she was very frustrated with the result in the European Championships, and that will be serving as fire here today, an extra motivation if she needed any.
You've got to be careful though about that sort of thing. You've got to use it in a positive manner. You cannot just go around complaining about things. You've got to use it, as you said exactly, Paula. You've got to use that to fire yourself up. You've got to say these rules are, you know, Sebco's got a big in tray and he spent the first year in the IAAF trying to clean up the governance of the sport. His second task is to clean up some of the issues, and this is a big issue. It's about athletes transferring countries because of convenience and for often for other reasons than just who they want to represent and where they live, and they really have to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely something that has to be covered by the new integrity unit, which has been set up now, or is in the process of being set up at the IAAF, because, I mean, let's be honest about it, there's actually cash changing hands probably for people to move and race for different countries, and that shouldn't be allowed to happen. There should be certain criteria in place that you have to satisfy in order to represent a country.
But I think we also have to be even-handed about it, because, you know, we have had athletes competing for Great Britain who've shifted allegiance, and that's the point. You have to make sure that it's legitimate. Obviously, people are allowed to, but it's up the IAAF to sit down, as Paulo said, and really draw up a set of guidelines based on that. Anyway, so Brendan said, use it in a positive way, and Fionnuala McCormack is trying to do that. I'm sure a lot of motivation to beat one of the athletes who won the medals at the European Cross Country Championships. Nowhere near Chan, the European champion, representing Europe here. A clear leader, but a great scrap on now for second place, as her teammate Achtag is trying to hold off Fionnuala, who is closed. In fact, it's closed very quickly just recently, because that 5-second gap was sort of staying the same, and all of a sudden it's down to a couple of seconds. There it is, and indeed, she's done what every good coach tells you. When you catch the one you're chasing, just go straight past them. That's what I was told anyway. You, Paula?
Yes, definitely, especially on cross country, and especially when you can see that the person in front of you is tired. Then you go straight past them, and you go past them strongly, because that is an extra kick in the stomach to somebody who's already tired, to see someone move past them and look so strong.
So a great performance from the European champion, dominant all the way. A great display, really, of good cross-country running. She's had a great summer in 2016, representing Turkey, a new country, at the Olympic Games. European champion now wins in Edinburgh, and it's a dominant win for Chan of Europe. And what a great performance from Fionnuala McCormack. In the last 5 years, she's finished in the top 2. She's done it again here. A real gutsy run from McCormack of Ireland, representing Europe here, beating Achtag, who finished well ahead of her at the European Championships. So some revenge for Fionnuala McCormack. Great last lap. So she takes second, and Europe, of course, fill the top 3 places. And indeed, more success behind them, because the athletes chasing in. 6 to count, don't forget. And a real good battle here. Lipari just getting ahead of Bobachel for 4th and 5th. And then Barker comes in, the 2 Romanians doing well. And Pippa Wolven, the first, just behind her teammate Charlotte Arter, the 2 of them, the first of the British athletes, 7th and 8th. Pagano, the first of the, second of the Americans to cross the line. America doing well, and that will mean, as we see the athletes cross the line here, real mountain to climb for Great Britain in terms of the team competition. Although they're doing reasonably well here, not as well as they would have expected. Beth Twell, a bit of a disappointing performance for Steph as she comes across the line in 16th place. So it'll be Europe who dominate in the senior women's. Looks like the USA and Great Britain will be very close for the points total to see who comes second. And it may well be that the points gap, if you like, between what the European women have done here will put them in a really dominant position going into the senior men's race. As we see the athletes come across the line, Jess Judd has just come across 24th. You can see there on the caption going through.
So a fantastic race for Europe, and we'll clear up the standings overall in just a moment. But let's speak to second over the line for Europe, Fionnuala McCormack, normally, of course, of Ireland. How was it for you out there today?
Yeah, it was tough, but it was good. I definitely enjoyed that a lot more than I enjoyed the Europeans. I think partly because of the course and partly because I probably felt I was more competitive there today. So
you always seem to do very well in Edinburgh, Fionnuala.
Yeah, I love it here. Like, I've ran here so many times before, and like even out on the course, like to me it's like home support, so it's brilliant. And like even coming down the home straight, I didn't know whether I was safe for second because there was so much support. So it's great. It's such a good atmosphere and a great race to be part of.
And Steve will confirm in just a moment, but it looks like that was a fantastic result for Europe as well.
Yeah, like I could only hear some of it like as I was going around, and I knew, well, obviously the two girls in front of me for most of the race were from our team, and then I heard the next two were as well. So yeah, it's good for Europe. But
well done, Fionnuala. Let's go back to Steve Cram then, who can clear up the standings of the race for us.
Well, yes, can confirm how well Europe did there. I mean, Fionnuala's performance with their top three finishes for Europe there obviously puts them in a great position. Bobbichell and Barker in 5th and 6th meant that Europe, as I said, 6 to count, Europe completely dominating in that with them. They'll come out as the victors with 28 points. And as I said, the real important thing is the gap that gives them between themselves and Great Britain and the USA in that race was close for second. In fact, USA getting it on count back, so 72 points each, but that's, what, 44 points if my maths are correct. And that means that in the match, Europe have gone from a position where USA were dominating to a point where Europe are now dominating as we head towards the senior men.
Well, it's